All right, we'll get back into our regular session now. Just to go back to the discussion that we had on the school's budget, there was some confusion on an email that was received by the county manager, and I was copied on that. And as a result, I would like to ask that the county manager read that email into record for the point of clarification.
I certainly will be happy to.
Thank you.
This email is dated June 13th, 2014. I don't see a time on here, but I think it was sometime in the afternoon. I could be wrong. Mrs. Cotto.
Cindy, could you pull your mic down?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You there? Yep. Okay. Mrs. Cotto, I recently informed you that possibly by today that the UCPS Board of Education could have the current expense and capital budgets to you. The Facilities Committee was unable to meet yesterday due to lack of quorum, giving multiple graduations in our schools as well as the hospitalization of the facilities chair. As there was no meeting, the full board was unable to consider capital funding at the meeting today. In addition, as the General Assembly should finalize the state budget shortly, we anticipate being able to make much more informed decisions about the best allocation of local dollars that would be included in the current expense portion of the budget. Finally, given the adoption of House Bill 292, it appears that budget decisions have now been made for all of us, so that our delay in getting more detailed information to you will not impede the ability of the commissioners to move forward with the further consideration of the county budget. I am sincerely looking forward to being able to work together as equal partners in a less charged atmosphere than we have experienced over the last year. Thank you, Mary Ellis.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Cotto.
You're welcome.
We'll let the record reflect that. All right. That will take us to item number 6 under old business, results of water and sewer rate study update and proposed rates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On board, looks like we got our PowerPoint working now. If I could get this screen down, Steve. It's just not my night.
Try it again, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, so again, I apologize to everybody that picked up one on the way in. They both look alike. The presentation you should be looking at says water and sewer rates down in the lower corner. What you have in front of you tonight for adoption is the 3-year water and sewer rate ordinance. There's a much more detailed discussion of this presentation and the water rate ordinance that went on, I believe it was early May, late April timeframe. We did a workshop, and that workshop's available on our budget website for everyone to see. These presentations, including the one from the schools, or not the schools, but the budget presentation from the public hearing earlier, we'll be sure we put on our website since we were not able to broadcast it, as we have made a practice of the entire process. But tonight's meeting is the adoption of that 3-year rate water and sewer ordinance, as well as some updates to the miscellaneous fee and calculation clarification pieces. First, this rate ordinance will establish a 6.5% increase annually from 2015 through 2017, and those are fiscal years. So those new rates will be effective on in July of 2014. And this is a little bit of break from what it was done in the last rate ordinance. The last rate ordinance would take effect, I believe it took effect in March and April. So this is going to go ahead and get this more in line and more in sync with our budget cycle and our needs. And I want to reiterate that the 6.5% rate increases we'll see here in just a moment over the 3 years supports the 14-15 operating and capital budget, and more importantly, supports the capital budget going forward that you have proposed in the manager's proposed budget. And I think it's important to reiterate as we kind of talk about when we make water rates, one of the things, there are several things we take into consideration, our goals for doing that. We want to ensure that we have sustainable operations, meaning that we want to be positive that the rate structure we put in place provides enough funding to continue operating the system. And we want to ensure a sustainable system, meaning that we want to be able to not only operate it, but maintain it. Be sure that the pipes delivering the water are able to deliver the water in a manner consistent with the expectation of the customers. And we want to be sure we have sustainable debt service, because obviously if we borrow money, we want to be sure that we set our rates sufficient to pay it back. In addition to the sustainability, we want to ensure rate fairness, meaning what's the mix that you have on your base rates and your volumetric rates. And when we say volumetric rates, what we refer to is the price you pay for each, or for the next 1,000 gallons you use out of your tap, versus your base rate, which is your demand or your readiness to serve rate, or that rate that you pay as just being a customer, so that water is able to come to your house or to your resident or your business. And rate stabilization, one of the things we want to really consider when we set rates is, are we having jagged rate increases? Is it 8% one year? Is it 1% the next? 15% the next? We want to be sure that as we have rates, we set those rates as such that if we have to have rate increases, there's a level or a gradual slope to the rate increases versus jagged, extreme rate increases in years and no rate increases in others. The other aspect of it is we want to ensure intergenerational equity. And what we mean by intergenerational equity is that those folks that are using the system at the time are carrying the cost or paying the cost for the system. So, one way to look at those are almost like legacy costs, meaning that if we're building a water treatment facility and if you wanted to pay for cash for that water treatment facility, all the ratepayers today would be paying for that. Well, they would contribute their cash. It'd take you 3 years to build it, and the ratepayers 3 years from now are the ones that would benefit. So when we build those major projects, such as wastewater treatment, major distribution lines, and so forth, what we want to be sure is that we're going to borrow debt, and that over the lifespan of that debt, that the ratepayers that are using that treatment facility, those 3 years from now, are going to be the ones that are paying for that. So we want to ensure that intergenerational equity. And then we want to encourage conservation. And it seems kind of silly, those folks that are in private business, you always want your clients to use more of your product. But one of the oddities or the interesting components of a public utility, in our case, is we want to help our customers learn to conserve and cut back on their water usage. So as we go forward, we want to create rate structures, in this case an inverted block structure, that allows us then to encourage that conservation. And we do that by charging a higher rate at higher tiers or higher levels of usage versus the traditional bulk discount model. So, these are just some of the goals that we set out or that we go through or work through when we're setting the rates. What you have in front of you is a 5-year projection going out to 2020. And you can see the yellow highlighted down at the bottom, the 6.5% increases for 15, 16, and 17. At this point, we're looking at a 7.5% in the out years, but that will absolutely change based on the capital markets, how capital projects are going. Or when I say capital markets, I'm referring to our debt markets, how we borrow the money, how the operations go, and so forth. And this is a model that's put together by our Red Oak Consulting. We work with them to develop this, and Ed Shop actually works real closely with them to get these down. And you can see across the PAYGO capital line, across the bottom is where the bulk of your expense is going to be, along with your new debt service coming in. Over time, through the projection, you can see the blue is revenues, the red expenditures in this graph. And when you see that red bar outpaces the blue bar, as you can see by the part I've called out there, you're using your reserve or your wastewater reserve as a rate stabilization tool. And there's a lot been made in the last year or so over the amount of fund balance or the amount of funding we keep in the water sewer fund. This is exactly why we keep a significant amount of fund balance in the water sewer fund, because over time it's to build capital and to ensure that the rates are stabilized going forward. And this model or this graph indicates to us that we're using a portion of that fund balance as a rate stabilization. Otherwise, you'd have to bring that blue bar up to the top of the red, which is a significant increase. And then you can see going across in 16, 17, that the blue keeps up closely with the red going forward. The largest driver of the cost in the water utility is not the operational cost. It's not the people, not the chemicals, not the day-to-day cost, but it's the capital cost. And this graph that you have in front of you right now represents what I call the capital effort of the utility, meaning over time, how much debt service are you paying, what's your PAYGO funding, and how does that relate to the expenditures or as a portion of your expenditures. And as you can see, under as the green bar increases, then it becomes about 50% of total expenditures. It's an upward trend going forward. So what this tells us is we have a growing system at this point. It's not matured. If it was a more mature system, that would be a little more level if you will, or maybe just slight increases. But our system's growing, and we're in a process of developing water resources and ensuring the long-term water supply, your long-term water master plan, the Norwood deal that you've just done in the last year or two. So all these things are now having to be developed, and you can see this is becoming evident in the funding structure. So as we go forward, the debt service is going to become a larger chunk of the operational funding, as evidenced in this graph by the growth in the red bars going across. And you can see the blue, the pay-as-you-go funding, which is the day-to-day maintenance or the small line replacement and so forth. Those tend to level out, or those level out around that probably that $4 to $6 million range going across. So this is the rates that you have in front of you tonight are structured in such a way to support this growth and this effort going forward, and to support the debt service that we forecasted. One question that's always raised, or that we always consider in looking, is what's the affordability of these water bills? If we raise the rates to, obviously if we raise them to a certain level, they become cost prohibitive for the average resident. In our case, we started in 2015, the average bill will be just over that $50, $54 mark, climbing in the 3-year window to just over $60. So we feel that that's a really good measure in looking at it affordability-wise. You can see on the right side of that graph is the percentage of the median household income that is used for the water bill. And this is a measure the bond rating agencies use to see if you borrow debt for your water system, what's the ability of the residents to pay it back. So as you can see, we're staying below that 1.2% range. Right now it's about 90.93% of their median household income is used, monthly household income is used to pay the water bill. And we're going to stay just above that 1% even through the window as we go forward. And you can see that in 2015 and right at 2016 is kind of where you cross that 1% range. So we feel that's a really good indicator. There are systems in the state that are in that 2% range, which is much higher than what we're seeing even at the peak year, or even in the future where that cost gets to be a lot higher. So these are the tables that actually show the outline or show the actual rate increases. The bold increases on this table are the rates that will actually increase over the next 3 years. I won't go through them all. And then your sewer charges as you go forward. Then we also mentioned we wanted to do some clarification or add some language to the code that allows us, or to the ordinance that allows us to charge or change the way we charge. The first is to better define the methodology for determining capacity fees on large meters. Before, this was based on 2-inch meters originally. This will be now based on anticipated usage of the new service. So it's a different way to calculate it. And again, there was an in-depth discussion of this during our workshop. Revised meter tampering fee structure: $100 for the first offense, $250 for the second offense, and $500 for the third offense. And this is done because a lot of times these meters are expensive and they can be damaged in the process. People that shouldn't have their water on, their water is turned on, and so forth. So this makes it a little more punitive. And some of these are also a crime. So this just making this fee more punitive and hoping to dissuade folks from doing that. Establish a meter installation fee based on the cost of the meter assembly as well as the labor cost. Add a new definition then for temporary construction meter. Again, this will be based on the meter size. And then increase the late fee to $10 or 5%, whichever is greater. And this is more in line with what's done around the state. I believe right now it's 5 and 5%, $5 or 5%, which is a little low. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions. Ed's here if you have any more specific questions about anything other than the financial modeling.
Any questions, Commissioner Helms?
Yeah, I trying to understand the math a little bit. The 6.5%. I mean, we've been talking about that in sewer since we had the extra expenditures for our outsourcing. But in your water-based facility fee, in the first year it's 21% increase. And by the 3-year period, it's a 48% increase. And I noticed that the tiers don't go up the first year, but the lower tiers go up more than the than the higher tiers. But it's basically about 13% increase, and I think that 6.5% is misleading.
Well, it's, when we say 6.5%, because there's, obviously you can see by these two tables, water and sewer rates are a number of rates across a number of tiers, and then when you get into drought tiers and so forth. So when we say 6.5%, what we're referring more to is it's on average 6.5%, and it generates that revenue increase of 6.5%. It's going to be different, varying based on the size of the meter, based on the tier that it is in. So it's not going to be a perfect 6.5% across the board. It's done in different components as well as through the different stages. Do you have any, what did you want to add to that?
Just to reiterate that, that's absolutely correct, that the 6.5% is the amount of revenue we need to generate based upon the rate model, the capital plan, the operating expense, and then we back into that number, that dollar amount that we need to achieve into the rate model and look at how this adjusts. So you're right, in the first year, the only thing that's changing in the first year on the water side is that base fee. The base fee is going from, I think it's $6.10 to $7.40, but all the gallon discharge is staying the same. So we put more, we put the increase all on the fixed fee, not on the gallonage. In the subsequent years, they're all going up incrementally. And part of the challenge we've had, as the board knows, our per capita consumption, our declining block rate has been a resounding success. We have a very aggressive rate structure that at the higher rates, higher consumptions, we're charging over $10 per 1,000 gallons. Our per capita consumption has dropped from 120 gallons per person per day down to 90 gallons per person per day in some of the recent numbers we're looking at. What it means is we need to recover more at the lower tiers to make sure we're generating that revenue. Because if we keep putting more in the top tiers, they just keep using less and we don't capture the revenue.
My concern is the perception. I mean, I happened to get my water bill today, and I forgot about the work I had done in my backyard and used extra water. So I looked at the numbers. You know, it went up $5 or $6, something like that, which is very reasonable. But I noticed that the lower tiers, which are most of the people sitting here tonight, with their base, in 3 years they're looking at a 48% increase and a 13% usage fee increase. So we need to call it like it is, instead of saying a 6.5. And I understand the methodology of spreading it out over everything, but most of our residents aren't looking at it that way. So, you know, since they're the ones going to be paying it, they need to understand what to expect. And I'm not going to get into the sewer. You've heard me for months talk about that, but we've got $1.6 million a year to spend extra in outsourcing, and this is how we got to pay for it.
When we look at our average residential customer, which is about 5,000 to 6,000 gallons per month, and I think this graph is based upon 6,000 gallons per month. We ran another analysis of 5,000 gallons per month. You know, the average bill for water and sewer customer that's using both water and sewer, on current rates, they're at $48.50. On the new rate structure, they'd be $51.90. Following year, that'll be up to $55.60. Final year, up to $59.30. So there is a couple. The first year, we're looking at a little over $3 increase to the average customer. Obviously, if you're using less water, you'll see even a smaller increase. And if you're using more water, you'll see a larger increase. The average customer will see about $3 increase, $3.40 increase.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Chairman, I move we approve and adopt an ordinance setting charges, fees, rates, and deposits for customers served by the Union County Water and Sewer System, establishing the water and sewer rates and fees for a 3-year period, fiscal years 2015 through 2017.
All right. Got a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All right. Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 1. All right. And that will take us to. Yes.
The ordinance, we need to have passed by unanimous vote,
Okay.
and so it will need to go back on the June 30th.
So this will appear on our June 30th agenda, as it did not pass unanimously. And now, will it need to pass unanimously on the second reading? Okay. All right. So then that takes us to Chairman Simpson. You had requested that we pull the Weddington Water Tower and put it on the regular agenda, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to make a few comments, and at my age, I find myself needing to write things down quite often, so in order to be succinct, I wanted to write my comments down. You know, the process of siting a water tower in the Weddington area has been a long and arduous task. I'm less than 6 months away from the end of my first 4-year term of office, and I believe the effort was started a good 3 years prior to my being elected, so nearly 7 years. Throughout those 7 years, county staff and the Board of County Commissioners have hopscotched throughout Weddington, wrestled with landowners, negotiated with numerous town councils, and educated citizens on the need for a tower in the Weddington area. Each attempt involved significant cost to the county. Shortly after being elected, one of the first tasks I requested of Ms. Cotto was to arrange a joint meeting with each and every municipality in the county, sit down together, and discuss their issues and how we might work together on issues of mutual concern. In the meeting with Weddington, the water tower was discussed, and Commissioner Johnson shared his feelings with everyone that a tower in the Weddington area is critical, and if the town would just show us where to put it, we would. Finally, after all these years, we received that approval from the Weddington Council, and zoning was approved for a tower at the location on Hemby Road. Just as in the past with each location, there were challenges from citizens and concerns from individuals on council regarding the specifics of the project and its impact on their property and their community. Discussion of late has been centered on the comparison of an elevated tower versus a ground storage tank and the cost difference with regard to construction and operation. As a commissioner, I respected the concerns of those involved and asked the manager and public works staff to seek outside consultation to evaluate the Hemby site and do such a comparison. This came at the expense of time in moving the project forward, as well as the expense involved with not one but 2 consultants. Despite my belief that an elevated tank is the least costly and most efficient for the system, I wanted to allow the numbers to be vetted to provide everyone with an understanding of why we were pursuing the elevated tank. In addition, it was my understanding that the town was willing to pay the difference in construction cost and ongoing cost of operation on the upgrade to a ground storage tank. Last week, a meeting was held to share the results of that study. Questions immediately arose as to the accuracy of the information and the consultant's estimated cost for various segments of the project. I, like the mayor, am a layman with respect to this type of information and do not have the engineering expertise to challenge many of those estimates. I do know that the figures presented are estimates, and Mr. Goshicki explained the ultimate price discovery will take place in the bidding process. The consulting firms who performed this study have worked for the county before with our Catawba River project, our long-term water and waste plan, the 12 Mile Creek sewer project, and numerous others. I have no reason to believe that they would risk their reputation or the potential for future business with other counties or municipalities as well as Union County by intentionally distorting the estimates or the comparison. Cost comparisons aside, my take from the meeting was that despite being unhappy with the idea of an elevated tank, despite the questions over the accuracy of the estimates, a ground storage tank was outside the financial wherewithal of the town. Throughout this 7-year process, this project has been referred to as the Weddington Water Tower. Well, that is incorrect. This is a water tower that is a part of the Union County water distribution system, which due to system dynamics needs to be located in the Weddington area. It serves not only Weddington residents, but citizens in Stallings and throughout the county's western edge. Herein lies the difficulty for me, for this board, and any policymaker who must make decisions which negatively affect a few at the expense of the greater good. No one wants a water tower in their back door, or a landfill a mile down the road, or a stadium across the street, or a thoroughfare that cuts through the center of their family farm. But these decisions must be made from time to time, and the decision to move forward with the construction of an elevated storage tank on Hemby Road this time falls on me. I believe this project is in the best interest of the citizens of Union County And so therefore, I will make the motion that we authorize the county manager to move forward with the bidding and construction of the elevated storage tank on the Hemby Road site.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Mr. Helms?
I agree with Mr. Simpson in a sense, but I also have to recognize that sitting through that meeting, the purpose was an apples-to-apples comparison, and that wasn't achieved. It was a my apples to my apples comparison. Mr. Yeager presented some information, construction being that his background is that, I think you said $43 a square foot to build a $3,500 square foot building as opposed to $200 a square foot. And those are some items that should be questioned, should be taken into consideration in the bid process. I don't think you got your apples to apples comparison. However, the finances, and I don't know where they're going to fall. But as I've told you over the months, the importance is providing water to the citizens of our county, ensuring that the fire and safety is available to them, and we're in a quandary. Trying to respect, and I think you've asked 4 questions and asked that they be looked at. I think that's a reasonable request. But we're here tonight to vote to move one way or the other.
Anything else? All right. All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4 against.
Against.
Against, 1 opposed. All right, that will take us to a resolution revising the board's regular meeting schedule. And let me find it here on item 7. It replaces item 7, is that right? All right, so I move that we schedule a special meeting June 30th, 2014 at 7 p.m. In fact, replace the special meeting and just schedule a meeting June 30th, 2014 at 7 p.m. in the Board Commissioners Meeting Room, Union County Government, located at 500 North Main Street. Consider proposed fiscal year 2014-15 budget and ad valorem tax rate for Union County Government, and to conduct any other business as may come before the board. And it will be a regular meeting. So, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay. Got all those extras out of the way. And that will take us to item number 8, appointments to board and committees.
Mr. Chair, make a motion, we appoint Ms. Anna Welch to the Adult Care Community Advisory Committee.
All right, got a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. All right. And now we're at item 8B, Workforce Development Board.
Mr. Chair, I move that we reappoint Ms. Raspberry and Ms. Walls.
All right, motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. That will take us to Madam Manager, your comments.
Yes, I just have one comment this evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and that is to extend my apologies to Dr. Ellis. My comments this evening were to convey to you that we would not be receiving the detailed information and priorities as it related to the Board of Education's budget. It certainly was not to create any angst to Dr. Ellis, and I appreciate the opportunity to read the entire message into the record.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Helms.
I have mixed emotions on the House Bill 292, but one thing I'm excited about, we've heard about how important our children are, and in the next couple of years, we're going to fund enough to fix all the roofs that we heard were so dire, fix the ADA and the security issues. And I'm excited that we'll be able to put that behind us in the next 2 years with this funding. And I wish everyone a good night.
Commissioner Johnson,
I wish everyone a good evening.
Commissioner Thomas,
I wish everyone a good evening as well.
Vice Chairman Simpson,
No further comments.
and I have no comments this evening. I wish everyone a good evening and move that we adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Very good. Thank you all.